Amazing. All right, everybody. So happy to have you here. My name is Laura Barr. I am the owner and founder of Emerging Educational Consulting. We provide one-to-one mentorship for students from the beginning to the end of the college application process. We wake up every day to say we're in the business of growing good humans, and we use the college application process as a way to do that. What better way to grow good humans than to provide information to impact and transform? And that's what we're here to do today with Craig Knippenberg. I am so honored to have you here. You and I have known each other for a very
long time. Yeah.
I feel like we were actually working together before the DSM had ADHD.
Yeah.
So we're
So
talking
the older version.
some gray hair and a lot of
I
experience together. And Craig,
yeah.
I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'm going to dive
Sure.
right into questions.
Thank you, Laura. Well, I've been a clinician, child and family therapist, especially in ADHD and other neuro exceptionalities for the past 40 years. I own Knippenberg, Langley, Patterson and Associates. Also a author of 2 books. First one, Brain-Based Development, that any parent can understand and teach it to your kids. And it's all about the prefrontal cortex, the emotional system, and the nonverbal system. But 3 chapters are dedicated to ADHD and how it all works, and for children to understand. And the earlier you can teach them, the better. I was also a consultant for the Average Center and St. Anne's Episcopal School for 27 years. Also I have a podcast for 4 years now called Legit Parenting. And as a father, my wife and I have 4 children. They're all adults now, 2 with ADHD. And I can tell you right off the bat that it's a lot easier to deal with ADHD at the office than it is at home. Because at home, I'm dad and I'm tired and I just want the room cleaned. But you asked me about what's it like to raise, and for both our girls, they really struggle with the distractibility and the disorganization and chaos. My daughter's room is just the most unbelievable thing you've ever seen. I finally gave up on it, and that's one of my tips for parents. You just decide what battles you're going to fight. And I finally gave up on the room. It just was so taxing for me. But I think it's important for parents to understand the most basic system in our brain is where dopamine runs through your desire and novelty centers, and then up to pleasure. And if you find something desirable, like let's say I offered Laura chocolate, and then I said, oh, I got some new ones from Belgium. They're incredible. So now her eyes are already lit up. You can see her dopamine levels are going up right now. You can see that. And then, so it's desirable, it's new. And if she eats it, if it's not so good, she's going to be, oh, thanks. And no pleasure's triggered, dopamine levels go down. Now, if it's really incredible, time is going to stand still in her mouth for about 15 seconds as she savors it. And her brain, the dopamine levels are going higher. And then it's going to say, pay attention to that. And she'll want another piece. And that's that primitive system. Now, for people with ADHD, they struggle with keeping that system engaged and staying focused when they don't find things novel or desirable. Like for my daughter, cleaning her room. It does nothing for her. Now, neurotypical people have something called hedonic pleasure, which means I can do mundane things like clean the house, do my taxes, whatever. Not that I really like it or it's novel. It's just that I know I'll feel pleasure when I'm done. And I'll feel I accomplished something. I'll feel more relaxed, like I'm ready for the week ahead. I'm ahead on everything. And ADHD people do not experience that. They cannot get the dopamine levels up when there's not immediate desire and novelty and pleasure. And they really struggle. And so for parents, you can't take it personally. I learned that a long time ago with the room. It's not she's being disrespectful or she's oppositional. She just can't get herself going. And often I say a teenage 16-year-old junior who's a high-performing student, and she's gotten several offers for scholarships for golf, women's golf. And she said to me the other night, she said, I decided I was going to organize my room. And I cleaned out the whole closet. And one side's got all the outfits laid out in colors. It's just great. But I still have this huge pile in the middle of the room that's been sitting there for like days. And she said, is that ADHD? And I said, yes, because the novelty, as she went with, the novelty wore off. And it wasn't so fun anymore. And now the pile's sitting there. And she said, I have piles all around my room of projects I started, new hobbies I was really into. And then I just lost interest.
And then I'm done.
There you go. That is ADHD.
You bring a good point. And I think, we have our early days together were with these little kindergartners, right, in classes where, what it looked like to have ADHD. And now we have a lot more years of experience for all of us professionals and parents of what it means to have ADHD as a teenager. And then now we're really having conversations about what is it like in college. And I know from my experience, I have been excited about the possibilities for students with ADHD at college because finally they get to kind of dig in. Those brains get to dig into the things that they care the most about, where in these early years, we expect them to be good at everything and they're not interested in any of it, which sets them up, right? So
there's nothing novel or interesting about most high school classes. So if you have an incredible teacher, I had one teenager say to me, well, I like Spanish because the teacher's really hot. Like, okay, so his dopamine levels are up in Spanish. He's focused in Spanish. But he said everything else is boring. The teachers are boring, and I don't like the subjects. So yes, and that's the beauty of college. Once you get, and if you're doing liberal arts, you're going to have to do all the classes. But as you go into your major and focus in on what you want to do, then you have the novelty, you have the desire, and you have pleasure. And then you can even get into hyper focus, which our kids love to do, where they're just spending all night reading something and then forget to go to sleep and wake up for the test. But they really, and it's true for students with dyslexia. And this was true for me, I'm dyslexic myself. Once I got into psychology, theology, philosophy, I didn't have to know all the words from other subjects. I could just focus on the lexicon of my profession. And that was life-changing.
What do you think? What do you think parents in high school should do to prepare students as they are headed into college? If you have any really direct tips.
Yeah, I think one is self-advocacy early on. With our daughter in 6th grade, she went to a workshop and made a PowerPoint about herself for her 6th grade teachers and how she learns best and her ADHD. And that was phenomenal. So you want to start early and help them understand their brain, how it works, how their medicine works or doesn't when they're not taking it, and get them involved, especially talking with teachers. I always say, I tell the kids, are you friends with any of your teachers? And they're like, no. I'm like, you want to be friends with your teachers. They care about you and they'll help you out. And then when you need to ask for help or you didn't hear something because you were distracted, you feel more comfortable asking them support. So that starts early on and really just hammers in high school. And I see quite a few twice exceptional ADHD kids who are also gifted and talented. So they're twice exceptional, who got through elementary school, middle school, breezed through, never had to study. Right. And their concept of homework is a worksheet. And when they get to high school, now it's like, oh, you mean I have to read a book and study ahead of time? Like, no, I'm used to just tomorrow. I'll do what's due tomorrow. And then they don't. And then they're always caught behind. They're in an emergency. I had the benefit of going to Cambridge in college in England for a semester, and you would get your books at the start of the semester and the professor would say, I'm going to have a tutorial with you. Let you sit down and talk with them for 2 hours. At the end of the semester, you don't have to come to class. You can read them on your own if you want, whatever, just be ready. Well, neurotypical students be like, okay, I'm going to break this down. I'm going to do book 1 here, book 2 this month, book 3. I'm going to go to the lectures. And the ADHD kids and the guys are going to be like, I can party for 2.5 months. This is great. I don't have any homework for 2.5 months.
Because they didn't have the worksheet, right? So let's back plan this a little bit. Let's back plan this a little bit. If that's the challenge that we know is that there's all this open time. Yes, they may get to study what they want, but there's also this open time. what are the things that we can support our students? So self-advocacy and
Yes.
being able to talk about self. What about study skills, executive function?
Yeah, so those start early as well. And the more you can get them into routines, the more you can get them into having, I gave one of my freshmen my American Express appointment book, and I said, write everything down. You'll remember it better if you write it down. And his eyes lit up. He's like, this is awesome. So it's getting them some tools to how to keep track of what they have, and thinking about time. So people with ADHD do not estimate time well. Not only do they not estimate, okay, I have to leave in 5 minutes. Oh, I have plenty of time. I can do whatever. But also, it's due in 2 months from now or 2 weeks from now. I need to manage my time so that I'm ready for that. So helping them break it down very specifically, write it in a planner. I like the writing, or put it in their phone app with reminders. Those kind of skills are going to be very beneficial for when they get to college. And then I also talk to them about, make sure you have roommates that can assist you. Rely on your roommates, your fraternity brothers, your sorority sisters. Ask them to help you make sure you get up on time. They're in your class. Have them remind you about that paper that's due. Study together. I did some of my best studying in groups with my fraternity brothers. It's helping them kind of realize they need extra structure. And if they don't design it, or you haven't implemented some of that already at home, they're going to flounder. They're not going to know what to do.
You know, you said something earlier that I think is tied to this, but it was a little bit about like you're sharing with your own kids, right? This idea of like, finally, I let it go, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't hold on so tight. And what is your opinion about this balance of holding on tight and having that
Yeah.
control, making sure they're in their planners, making sure they have their routine,
Yeah.
knowing that eventually they're not going to have you there?
Right. Yeah. So start early in high school, turn more of the control over to them. So for parents, I say, look, and to the kid, I'm like, you need to check Schoology or whatever they call it, or Power School every day. Now for parents, I want you only to check it with your student on Sundays. Don't you check it every night, because you're going to flip out. And then you have that dynamic where the parents say, you didn't get this done. The kid thinks they have, or they say, well, the teacher didn't enter the grade yet. And then you're arguing, and homework's a buzzkill for families with exceptional kids. It's a total nightmare, but only check it once a week. Don't be checking every day. Don't go in the weeds too deep. And when they're at college, don't track on their phone if they're at class, and then text them to let them know you saw them. They are not going to grow that way. And you have to remember, you're a parent. So sometimes it's best handled by an academic coach, a therapist. They'll listen to you. I can't tell you how many times I've said to my daughter, give her advice, and she blows it off, of course. And I'm like, honey, believe it or not, people pay me a lot of money for this advice. And she'll flip her blonde hair and go, but you're not their father, and walk away. And I'm like, oh. So they often learn more from others than they will from you. Maybe a good teacher will teach them.
Yeah, we love that. We often say, like, when we scaffold the college application process literally task by task from the beginning to the end. And parents always will say, they will listen to you, but not to us. And I remember that all too well from raising my own 4 kids. I think one of the let's talk for a second about college readiness. So I have a lot of parents who are like, gosh, I don't know if my student is even ready. Like, how are they even going to do that? We have a launch checklist that we kind of provide, but what's your criteria?
First of all, I tell parents, if you have a student who's exceptional, let's say ADHD in this case, you have to take a 2-year developmental perspective. They are on average about 2 years behind their normal peers age. So our daughter's 19 now. She acts very much like a 17-year-old. Her older brother, who's neurotypical, he acted like a 19-year-old when he was 19. She's still kind of in the 17 range. So sometimes you may do the gap year. Your student may not be ready to take off for college yet. So it does take some brownies longer to cook, is longer to bake, and they may not be ready. But the more you can start in high school, of turning it over to them. And I'm glad you brought up the placement process, because seniors, the fall of spring or year, I see some of these kids, our seniors, are just overwhelmed come October, November, the applications, and they all have coaches. The parents are shelling out big money and they have the coaches, and then they tell the parents they're all cut up, they got everything turned in. Then the coach calls the parents, emails parents to say, oh, he's behind. I don't know if I can keep him because he's running behind. Well, then the parents go in his room and say, you're behind, and we get back to that. So the easiest trick is take yourself out of the middle. So if you get something, for an email or text from the teacher or your college placement planner about your child, you just say, thank you so much. I will forward it to them. And then you forward it or print it out, give it to them and say, you need to respond to this and copy us so that we know you've done it. So don't be the one, if you're bearing the bad news, you're just a parent harping on them again. So take yourself out of the middle, so that they then have to deal with the teacher or the college placement planner, because that's what they'll have to do in college. You're not going to know what they're doing, what their assignments are, and you shouldn't know. I'm really opposed to parents being involved in college. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think it's that whole transition, right, from holding on tight and letting go. And what does it mean to launch? And also this balance of, how do I know if my child's ready? And then also, what are the supports at each institution, or are there private supports that my student is willing to take to be able to scaffold that?
Yeah. And that's where, as they're getting ready to wherever they're going, start the scaffold building process at college early. You want to go visit, you want to tour the learning center, find out what services are available, how are they going to get their medications, if they have a therapist. I see a lot of young men online on Zoom. One's in England, another one's going to England too, got one in Australia, where we just do Zoom sessions so that I still see them. But if you're not going to do that, then maybe hook them up with a psychiatrist wherever they are, so they don't run out of meds, because they will run out on their own. And you really can't just ship them yourself. Maybe a therapist in town, or maybe an academic coach that comes to their dorm room. Most of the learning centers have academic coaches there, but they still have to go. So you really have to work on, okay, here's where it is, and you got to make sure to go. And if you could always hire one to come to their dorm if you needed to. But it's better to get those things set up ahead of time. And then the other thing I often recommend is that first semester freshman year, it's really learning about how to be a college student. It's learning how to live with other people, how to take care of your clothes, your nutritional needs, and not overindulging, how to get some mental health time in, and how to do some studying and try to stay up with the course load. I had a kid who's at an incredible school out east in music, and I said, this first semester is about you adjusting. If you get a couple D's, you can take them over. You don't have to finish in 4 years. And the parents were on board with that. You really got to get used to just being there and being a college student, not to mention handling all the party activities and fraternity and sorority rush. You're always going to have that going on. But you don't want to be just pounding them away on the grades. What are your grades? What are your grades? It's really a learning experience. And it's one step at a time. Our daughter's finally launching. She finished her cosmetology degree, passed the practical exam, flying colors. It took her 4 times to do the written test over 5 months. We were at our wits' end, but she finally, and this is such a great story, because at first she wouldn't let us help her. She thought she got some janky thing online to study, didn't apply to Colorado at all, failed. Then she found out from her old school that they had everything in her notes. And then finally she got the Colorado test exam prep kit, and she allowed my wife to sit down with her an hour a day to go over it with her. Now, if she was off at college, that would be a tutor. Sits down with her an hour a day, goes over it, and she passed, and she got picked up by this bougie salon in Littleton, Colorado.
Yay.
And the owner is her mentor and has taken her under his wings. And she started cutting for the first time last week. She's been shampooing, and she's working towards having her own station. And it's just been these leaps, but after some deep valleys. We were in some pretty hard valleys this summer when you have a 19-year-old around the house all day just working night shift at Target. But then, it started happening, and we're seeing this maturity, and her even thinking about savings. She starts saving to move out. So growth doesn't happen the same for all kids. It very much varies, and you will go through a lot of deep times, and that's where you have to hold on to your trust in them and your faith in them, and you have to embrace parental anxiety. Parenting an exceptional child is very difficult. Statistically, exceptional parents get 10 times the negative phone calls from school than neurotypical parents. It's exhausting. You're just hopeless sometimes, and you just keep hanging on that, okay, we're going to take care of ourselves. So helping your kids with their mental health starts with you and yours. Take care of your mental health and your partner's mental health. My wife and I, our youngest daughter, we adopted at age 7, and she gave us a run for our money. And we're both therapists, but we got this covered. And one of the things we did really well is every 2 weeks, we just sit in the room and talk about, how are we doing? How are you doing? This is how I'm doing. And not judging each other, but that's where I can say, I can't handle trash in the room. It just goes against my Germanic upbringing. I just want to flip out. And she'll say, well, I'll talk to her about this. And we kind of do some planning, but that's going to help with your emotions. And then from there, you can support your child's mental health. And one thing that's critical, because ADHD kids get 10 times the negative feedback at school as neurotypical kids. So they're beat up since they're little, and they often have really painful experiences at school or lots of shame. And what they do when they fail so many times, they get into lying and hiding. They try to hide their mistakes, or they make up lies because they're just embarrassed and tired of always being in trouble, right? And so sometimes you just want to validate that with your student. I know it's hard. I know it's hard for you. And then after you validate it, what you want to say to them. So if they're at college, in high school, and they call you and they're in a tizzy and they need rescuing, they want you to rescue them, right? What I want you to do is take a deep breath and think to yourself, is my child capable of handling this themselves? If the answer is yes, you just say, I have complete faith in you, honey, that you'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. I trust you. And you empower them, and you trust them to be able to handle it. There might be some occasions where you think, I probably do need to help with this one. So when my daughter had her first car accident, I jumped in the car and was right there to help her. Mm-hmm. That was a little overwhelming, right? But other things, you want to trust them and turn it over to them as much as you can.
I think that's so lovely. The reminder that our number one job is to love them no matter what. No matter what. It's that unconditional love. And I think what happens sometimes in the teen years where the stakes get higher.
Yeah.
Right?
And your anxiety goes up.
And the anxiety goes up. And this whole idea, like I always say, it's our job as parents is to launch our kids into the world. Yeah. Right. And the way that they launch is by going to college or going on a gap year or going into a trade of some kind. And there's lots of different paths. And I think sometimes setting, and even just thank you so much for sharing your own daughter's story, right? Because sometimes our expectations don't always meet where our children's abilities might be. Yes. At this given time, by the way, because I think that flexibility and thinking time, and I think I wanted to respond a little bit to what you said about the college experience. And I think we do a lot of that talking in our practice because we have a section called solo expedition. So after our students have gotten into college, it's like, okay, you've gotten in, now what's next? Right? Like, let's get hold of the disability services office. Let's find out exactly, we already know what's offered or we wouldn't have applied there, but let's also find out about what it looks. Do you need to live? Do you need an accommodation to live alone? Do you need a roommate?
Right.
How do you ask for a roommate? And do you take 5 classes or do you take 3 and then take 1 for the summer so that maybe you can graduate within that 4-year period of time? And so I think the creativity that you're talking about is something that we are really trying to promote to our parents and to our students. And
And
let's just
that's,
say ADHD students are the most creative,
oh, they are.
the
It's
most
incredible. Yeah.
flexible in some ways, and the most brave to try things, because sometimes it's that adrenaline, it's having them try for that novelty. So
For
it's
a new
great.
thing, but what you're doing is a very creative scaffolding job, and you want to be creative with that scaffolding that you're giving them, and you don't have to do it in this particular way. Just because mom and dad did doesn't mean you to. And that's what you're doing when you're meeting with them and coming up with these plans, or maybe a summer class. It is really sort of thinking outside the box. And in terms of creativity, the area of the brain for creativity is right behind the prefrontal cortex. And ADHD kids love to live there. They love to live in imagination and creativity and dream up things that most people don't. The problem is transferring that to their prefrontal cortex, where they can plan and turn it into action steps and make it happen. And that's the hard part. And I have a dear friend who owns Duffy's Cinnamon Rolls here in Denver,
Oh,
and he was ADHD as could be. And he did the smartest thing. When he opened his first shop, he hired Debbie, who was his German bookkeeper. And she did all the books, ordered all the flour, paid the payroll. And Nick, as I like to say, my buddy Nick is rolling in the dough right now. And he just has fun. And his personality, when he's there, he's just greeting customers, having a good time. And he doesn't have to do the prefrontal cortex stuff. So someday you hire somebody.
that's right. You surround you get good. I think these students, and also, we know so many CEOs and business owners and everything, they surround themselves with the people who can support them, which brings us back. And as we finish up this 30 minutes, I think brings us back to the conversation that starting early in building skills, being able to self-advocate, being able to slow down enough to really figure out what is it that I need to be able to be successful, and for students to be able to ask for that help. And the
Yes,
earlier we do that, the
the
more
better off.
successful these students will be.
And you have to, the key of my second book is Shame-Free Parenting, and it's about letting go of your own guilt and shame, because there's no research. If you're a good enough parent, and all these parents I see, they're tremendous parents. If you're good enough, your kid's going to be who they're going to be. Their trajectory, their genetics are going to take them to where they're meant to go. You can't change that. There's only one thing they've ever found that could influence your child's well-being for the rest of their life, and it's parental kindness. If your parents are kind people, your kids will be kind to others and will benefit their mental health for a lifetime. But nothing else. And the other thing is, you're not an engineer. You do not engineer your child. You're a shepherd. They are their own sheep, and you're going to guide them to green pasture. You're going to keep them alive. First goal of parenting is keep them alive. Then you want to shepherd them to green pasture. So right now, maybe you're looking at Laura's program. That's a really nice green pasture. But you can't make the sheep eat. They have to decide that on their own. And if your sheep's not ready to eat yet, maybe they're not ready for that pasture. And you wait till they are. That you can't make them do things. It's just shepherding them to wherever they fit, wherever they belong.
I want you to say, I want to end on the note of the kindness. Will you just say that again? It's so beautiful.
Yes.
And it's so back to like growing good humans, right? Like,
yes. Oh, very much. Yeah.
It
is about, because when you do an act of kindness, obviously the other person benefits, but the verbal and the non-verbal feedback you get from them, or even if you don't, it's overseas and you never even get it, but you know that they're feeling that. And that makes you, the giver, the kind person, feel incredible. It's great for your relaxation, your stress, and your own mental health. And you're just teaching them to be kind, to spread the love to others and be a good human being. And that's way more important than if they're eating in this pasture or that pasture. It's just being kind. And the other thing I tell parents all the time, you have to think of your child's life as like a giant stained glass window. By the time they go off to college, there's billions of pieces of glass in there. And if you're a good enough parent, most of those pieces of glass are just wonderful. And sure, there's going to be some pieces that aren't very attractive, because that's when you yelled at them, or they yelled at you, or they said they wanted you out of their life forever. All those teen drama things, right? They're going to be there, but they don't even compare to all the other beautiful pieces of glass. And we know in the Gottman principle, for every negative interaction you have with your child, if you have 5 positives, you have a great relationship. And when you think about everything you as a parent are doing for your kid every day, you probably got 30 or 40 positives to 1 negative. And their stained glass window is going to be beautiful.
I mean, what a beautiful, we have been talking for 30 minutes. And I think that is the one thing, the 5-to-1 ratio, right? For every negative thing, the 5 positive, being kind and loving your student no matter what. And what a treat to have you today, Craig.
Thank you, Laura. It's been fun.
So I really love it. And we're so grateful for your 30 minutes and hope you'll come back on another time.
Oh, I would love that.
Okay, good.
Talk about more. All right. Okay, thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. God bless. Thank you.